So let's jump a bit deeper into our passage this evening. Genesis chapters 1 and 2, starting at verse 31. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested, he Sabbathed, from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested, he Sabbathed, from all the work of creating that he had done. As we've said the last couple of weeks, the word translated rested is Shabbat in Hebrew, which literally means to stop, to rest. But it also has this idea that God delighted in his work. The idea here isn't that God was burned out and needed a break. No, it's more like the feeling you get after a long, hard day of working in the garden, where you get it all cleaned up and beautiful. Then you call it a day, take a shower, and you sit in a deck chair and you just enjoy it. You take that moment to say, this is good. Or that feeling when you complete a work project that was months long and you throw a party with your team, you're taking time to say, this is good. Or you've been studying for your exams and they're finally over and you can finally rest and celebrate. You're taking time to say, this is good. Or when you finish a hard season with someone you're caring for, perhaps, and you just get to breathe for a little while. That's the feeling of Sabbath, pausing, resting, but then delighting in the goodness of the work that's been done. Notice also that God blessed the Sabbath day. The word here is barak. Yes, like Barack Obama. This is where his name comes from. Barak in Hebrew is normally translated to bless, but it more literally means to make happy. The Sabbath is a happy day, an entire 24-hour time period set aside to follow God's example, to stop, rest, and delight. But what do we delight in? Following the pattern of what we see in Genesis, we delight firstly in God's world, to let your mind focus on all that is good in the earth, to curate a view of the world with special attention to the good, the beautiful, and true. Secondly, we delight in the blessings of life that God has poured out in abundance. I said it last week, so I won't properly repeat myself, but a practice you can do every now and then on the Sabbath is to make a list of things you're grateful for, even if it's the tiniest little example. It's so easy to lose sight of just the full extent of goodness that we have in our lives, even in the midst of difficult times. We all know how easy it is to focus on bad stuff instead of good stuff. If someone criticizes you, how many compliments does it take to cancel out that one criticism? I think it's like 7 or 8 or something like that. But on the Sabbath, it's like we mitigate against this survival instinct in our brain and we remember, as the Sabbath command has it, just how many blessings populate our lives. And thirdly, we delight in God himself. This might be a bit of a funny kind of expression of delighting in God, but it's something that's been a really key theme throughout the history of the church. In the Westminster Catechism, a theological document that was foundational for the beginning of the Church of England, it asks a question at the very beginning: what is humanity's primary purpose? And it says, our primary purpose is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. This is what we're created for. The very purpose we have for existing is to glorify the God who made us, but also to enjoy him, to take delight in him, to be captivated in love for him. So often we can think of God as a judge or a taskmaster, someone who's always going to be on our case, a debt collector maybe. But no, the call on every human life is to glorify the God who made us and to enjoy him. I love how so that's the point of Sabbath, is to set aside time to do just that, to glorify God and to enjoy him, to delight in him. The theologian Marva Dawn writes in her book, Keeping the Sabbath Holy, says, observing the Sabbath gives us the opportunity to be as careful as we can, to fill our lives with beauty and to share beauty with the world around us. When we observe a day especially set apart for beauty, all the rest of life is made more beautiful. In a larger sense, the whole practice of Sabbath keeping makes me feel more beautiful. As I spend the day reflecting on the character of God, I am overwhelmed by his love for me. As I feast upon his goodness in all its beautiful forms, I realize more profoundly that I am a special part of his creation and designed especially for his purposes in a uniquely beautiful way. Hopefully the picture is coming into focus a little bit more. Sabbath is not a dreary religious duty, but a life-giving day of delight. So I just want to spend the last few minutes digging into the practicalities of how we go about this. This kind of joy is so against the flow, not only of our culture, but as we've said, even against the neurological wiring of our own brain to look at the negatives. So how do we practice Sabbath in a way that cultivates that joyful delight in God and the goodness of the world he has made? A few things. First, we have to slow down. Hurry and joy are incompatible. Delight demands that we slow down and savor the goodness of each moment. I can say that this is very much a work in progress for me. This is not something that comes naturally. But we try our best to do as God did. We pause and we see that it is good. The theologian Kosuke Koyama notes that God himself has a precise speed, and it's not quick. In fact, it's about 3 miles per hour. It's walking pace. If we think about God as our savior, we might be tempted to think of a sense of urgency, like a superhero with a cape billowing out behind him, flying at the speed of sound. But no, when God comes to save us, God walks. When God comes to dwell amongst us, God walks. Oyama describes the love of this 3 mile per hour God. Love has its speed. It is a spiritual speed. It is a different kind of speed from the technological speed to which we are accustomed. It goes on in the depth of our life, whether we notice or not, at 3 miles an hour. It is the speed we walk, and therefore the speed the love of God walks. So if we are pursuing the love of God, if we are using the Sabbath to intentionally set aside time to delight in and enjoy that love, that means we need to slow down. God comes to us at 3 miles per hour, and if we're going quicker than that, we might just miss him. We can't delight in God if we're running ahead of him. We can't be followers of Jesus if we're jogging on ahead of him along the road. Delight means keeping pace with a God who moves at an unhurried speed. Secondly, delighting in God on the Sabbath will require us to put boundaries around our day. When the authors of Deuteronomy give the command to observe the Sabbath and keep it holy, that word observe is translated from the Hebrew shema, and it means to keep, to watch over, to guard. Think of how we observe a holiday or holy day, such as Christmas or Easter. We guard it, we make it special and unique. That's the idea. Sabbath is like a weekly holy day. We are to keep over it unless it becomes just another ordinary day. So entering Sabbath delight will require us to say no to some things in order to say yes to joy. When we think of something being holy, we might think of holy space or holy places. You might hear people going up a holy mountain or going to a holy cave or going to a holy temple. But instead, God makes a holy day. Rabbi Joshua Heschel called the Sabbath architecture in time and said the Sabbaths are our great cathedrals. Sabbath is that space where we carve out the time. We make it holy. There are points when people have gotten a bit too legalistic about these boundaries that need to be put in place on the Sabbath. There are multiple times where Jesus heals people on the Sabbath, and the teachers of the Jewish law get angry at him for working on the Sabbath day. But Jesus asks them, if your sheep falls into a pit on the Sabbath, wouldn't you go and pull it out? Of course you would. It's not that we are made to obey these strict ritual laws of the Sabbath, but the Sabbath is made for us. So don't be too legalistic about it, but also make sure to protect the time. For example, if you do enjoy working in your garden, absolutely crack on and do some gardening on your day off. But if you work as a gardener from Monday to Friday, maybe just find something that's a little bit less like work. Protect the Sabbath. Carve out cathedrals in time. Thirdly, give yourself to joy. This is perhaps the main thing I want to get across this evening. Give yourself to joy. Reb Zalman, another rabbi actually, says that the Sabbath is a day for pampering the soul. I love that. A great question to ask yourself and give shape to this practice of Sabbath is, what could I do within this 24-hour period of time that would bring me deep, visceral joy in God? A few examples might be feasting, get together with friends or family and have good food, not just your standard weeknight meal, but food that makes your heart happy and your soul thankful. Community, celebrate the Sabbath day with the people you love. Gratitude, again, map out the things you're thankful for. Play, Sabbath is a chance to do these things which are purely for fun. So often we save the really fun stuff for a special occasion like a birthday or something. But we have a weekly holy day, a weekly celebration day that we don't need to save up the fun stuff for. We don't need to just save the fun stuff for special occasions. We have that time every week. Nature, anything beautiful, from forest trails to flower petals, all of it is created to be enjoyed and delighted in. There's so many things that could go on this list, and you'll know the things that bring you delight. The arts, poetry, music, singing, dancing, laughter, walking, picnics, flowers, sweets, time with family, friends, the outdoors, watching the sunset. Whatever it is, feed your soul with beauty. The world is filled with ugly things. Feed your soul with beauty. And the fourth and final thing, how do we take delight in God through the Sabbath? This is perhaps the most important one. We worship. These joyful activities aren't just an end in themselves. I'm not just talking about having fun for the sake of having fun. But we use the Sabbath for joyful activities because it fills our hearts with an increasing adoration of the Lord. Sabbath is time to step back and go, God, how ridiculous is your love? Look how much you've blessed us with. Look at the extravagance of the life you've created for us. Look at the sheer abundance of your goodness that you have poured into creation. Sabbath delight is a delight oriented towards the glory and praise of God. Sabbath is a day for worship. A lot of us hear the word worship and we think of singing, and that is absolutely an example of worship and something we'll do in just a second. But worship is so much more. Worship is to orient and reorient your life, your entire life, around God, our Creator, our center. It's to lay your entire life before Him in love and to deepen our surrender to His love. The Apostle Paul, in the letter to the church in Rome, says, give yourselves as a living sacrifice to God. Rather than putting stuff and things on an altar, bring yourselves, says Paul. You don't need to sacrifice a goat or a ram or anything like that to make God happy. Jesus has already paid the ultimate cost to make things right between you and God. All you have to do is bring yourself. This is what worship is. Bringing your whole life before God and offering it to him, making him that central point of your everyday. So this is how we feed our soul with beauty on the Sabbath. We slow down. We put boundaries on our time. We give ourselves over to joy. And above everything else, we worship, glorifying the God who made us and enjoying him forever. I'm going to invite the band back up. And in just a moment, we are going to move into a time of sung worship. Can I invite you to stand just where you are?